Before we dive into today's gripping sci-fi tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below if you believe loyalty is stronger than fear. This story is for those who know that even the deadliest predator can have a heart, and when it does, it becomes unstoppable. Now let's begin. Blood mist sprayed across the metal wall as the last of the insurgents fell. Its body struck the floor with a wet crack, twitching once before stillness took hold. Cale stood amidst the wreckage, talons slick, breath steady. He did not pant. He did not shake. He only watched. Watched for movement. Watched for a command that never came. A voice crackled through the comms. Colt. Alien. Unit K-117. Perimeter secured. Hold position. He obeyed, but not out of obedience. The words meant nothing to him. Orders were background noise like static behind instinct. He didn't kill because he was told to. He killed because that's what he had been made for. But lately, something else had started to creep in. Something he didn't have the vocabulary for. Not yet. Heavy boots echoed through the corridor. The soldiers flanking him made space without a word. They hated standing near it. Him. The apex. The predator. Only one man ever approached without fear. Rourke Vane stepped over the body, his expression unreadable beneath the tactical half-mask. He was lean for a soldier, human by all counts, and yet there was a steel in his presence that made even the apex tilt his head. Rourke looked Cale over, what others called a monster, a weapon, a tool, and said simply, "You all right?" Cale didn't respond. He couldn't. His vocal cords had been cauterized during genetic infancy. Words weren't his domain. But his eyes locked onto Rourke's. A flicker passed between them, recognition, almost understanding. Rourke sighed and tapped a blood-smeared tablet. 1 minute late on response time. You held back. The alien officer behind him scoffed. The unit was inefficient. Should have used a pressure blast and vaporized the corridor. Cleaner. Faster. Cale's eyes narrowed. The alien didn't notice. Rourke did. You want clean, stay in orbit, Rourke muttered. He neutralized the hostiles without collateral. That's all that matters. The alien officer hissed something in his own tongue and walked off, muttering about war assets and chain of command. Rourke waited until the sound of boots faded before turning to Cale again. You did good, he said almost under his breath. That phrase. Cale had heard it before. Not from superiors, not from mission briefings, but only from this man. It lodged somewhere beneath his armor, in that strange place where pain sometimes turned to memory. Rourke said it like it mattered. Like he meant it. Back at Outpost Lasara, the med bays were silent except for the low hum of biochambers and occasional sparks from flickering ceiling lights. The war had stripped supplies thin. Only essential personnel remained. Cale's holding chamber was reinforced with 8-inch carbitanium plating. The lights stayed dim. Monitors tracked every neural impulse, muscle tremor, and temperature fluctuation. But tonight, the chamber was open. Rourke stood just outside the threshold, helmet off. He held a datapad in one hand, his free arm braced in a sling. You dislocated my shoulder last time, he said with a faint smirk. I had it coming. Shouldn't have grabbed your neck like that. Cale sat crouched in the corner, body at rest, claws retracted. His golden black eyes watched Rourke without blinking. I know you're not a fan of small talk, Rourke said, stepping inside, but I'm not here to train you tonight. Cale didn't move. I'm here to give you something. Rourke crouched, lowering the pad onto the floor. It displayed an image, an old military personnel file. A photo of a young man, maybe 25, covered in blood and smiling like a lunatic. Beside him stood a juvenile prototype predator, leaner, more skeletal, but unmistakably Cale. Or something like him. That guy's name was Mason. Mason Pyre. My partner. He was assigned to one of your early models before the Coalition scrapped the empathy program. They said you couldn't bond. Said predators didn't form attachments. Too unstable. Cale's eyes darted to the image, then back to Rourke. They lied, Rourke said. They always lie. Cale leaned forward, something subtle in the movement, not threat but interest. I watched you on the battlefield, Rourke continued. Not just today. I've seen how you look before you kill. You calculate. But there's more. You only go lethal when there's threat to someone else. You protect. Not because we tell you to, but because you choose to. Cale's muscles flexed under his carapace. He slowly reached forward, tapping a clawed finger on the image of the old predator. His eyes burned, not with rage but with a raw flicker of something like longing. Rourke straightened. That one was designated K-36. He died protecting Mason. Disobeyed direct orders to retreat. They called it system failure. I called it loyalty. Silence hung between them. I don't care what they call you, Rourke said softly. To me you're Kale. That's not a code. That's your name. Kale's breath hitched. The moment passed. The door behind them hissed open. 2 alien officers entered, flanked by armed guards. One of them held a data slate with red markings, violation protocols. Commander Vane, the taller one said, you've been removed from active duty. Per Coalition Ethics Review, your proximity to a Class 9 predator exceeds permissible psychological thresholds. You're being reassigned to orbital detainment for evaluation. Rourke didn't even turn. I see. You will not be permitted further contact with Unit K-117. It will be remanded to Coalition Command for reprogramming. Kale stood slowly. The guards raised weapons. Remain still, Predator. Rourke lifted a hand. Easy. Stand down, Kale. Kale did not sit. The taller alien tapped the guard's comms. Sedate the Predator. Now. Rourke stepped between them. You try that and he won't be the one needing medical evac. The guards hesitated. One alien sneered. You're defending a weapon. No, Rourke said, turning fully now. I'm defending someone who saved our lives more times than you can count. There was a tense pause. Then the guards advanced. Rourke raised both hands in compliance. Fine. I'll go. Kale's eyes locked on his. A flicker passed again between them, unfinished thought, unspoken warning. As Rourke was escorted out, he didn't look back. But Kale did not look away. The next morning the chamber was sealed. Lights red. Warning alarms low and constant. Kale remained perfectly still while 3 alien handlers approached, clad in shock armor and carrying neural disruptors. The lead handler spoke into a recorder. Commencing termination protocol for Unit K-117. Subject has shown deviation from obedience structure. Potential emotional override. Likely corrupted. One of the handlers raised a sedation lance. Pity, he muttered. Could have been a valuable weapon. As the lance hissed toward Kale's neck, his eyes opened. Not blinking. Not frantic. Cold. Focused. His arms snapped up too fast to track. The lance shattered. The handler's body hit the wall, neck twisted at an angle never meant for bone. The others screamed, reaching for weapons, but Kale was already behind them. Steel walls soaked with blood within seconds. Only one remained alive, crawling backward, limbs broken, voice pleading. Kale stepped over him. No sound. No expression. He left the chamber. The sirens didn't blare until he was gone. Somewhere far above the base, a ship was just leaving orbit. On board, cuffed to a seat in a secure pod, Rourke stared at the floor. A single word buzzed through the guards' encrypted comms, followed by silence. Containment breach. They didn't see him coming. That was the first mistake. The second was assuming he wouldn't come at all. The escape had triggered a full lockdown. Dozens of armed response teams combed the outpost tunnels with heat sensors and subsonic trackers. Kale was a ghost among shadows, a presence more felt than seen. He didn't run. He waited. He listened. He learned. The guards relied on protocol. He relied on instinct. They swept in patterns. He moved in silence. Where they tightened their search grid, he watched from the ductwork, talons poised, breath low, pupils wide to the tremor of every footstep. 3 squads went missing before anyone realized they were being hunted. Meanwhile, Commander Vane was shackled to a vertical restraint chair inside an orbiting prison vessel, a retrofitted cargo hauler renamed the Judicator. Its interior smelled of rust and sterile plastic. The lights were harsh and white, designed to strip prisoners of time, of orientation, of any sense that life continued outside. Rourke had been there for 6 hours. Or maybe 12. The guards didn't speak. Neither did he. He replayed the last moments before his removal, the flicker in Kale's eyes. That look. He'd seen it only once before, on the battlefield when Rourke had been pinned under rubble, half-conscious, and Kale had torn through 3 armored siege crawlers to reach him. There was no word for what flashed between them that day. No command issued. Just understanding. Loyalty. Rourke clenched his jaw. Don't be stupid, he whispered to the empty cell. Don't come after me. But deep down, a part of him already knew it was too late for warnings. Back on the outpost, panic had taken root. Security systems were shredded. Surveillance feeds went dark one by one. Kale didn't strike randomly. He dismantled communications first. Then he severed oxygen supply to the East Barracks. Then the power grid in the command center. The aliens had turned the apex predator into a precision weapon. Now that blade was aimed at them. Marshal Drencast, the ranking officer of the Lysara outpost, paced within the panic chamber, a circular room protected by auto turrets and independent oxygen filtration. 3 advisors watched nervously as he barked into his comm line. "I want that creature terminated. Now." "He's not a creature," said a low voice behind him. They turned. The senior bioengineer, a Zarn-class geneticist named Valak, stood holding a data crystal. His thin eyes blinked slowly. "What did you say?" Drencast hissed. Valak inserted the crystal into the projection node. A grainy video played. A still frame of Kale cradling a dying Rourke during a training op gone wrong. Kale had dragged him 4 kilometers under fire without orders, shielding him with his own body. "That's not programming," Valak said. "That's choice." Drencast slammed his fist into the table. "Then we should have wiped him sooner." "He knows we executed the human," one of the advisors murmured. That silenced the room. Drencast nodded grimly. "Then he's not hunting for freedom." "No," Valak said. "He's hunting for vengeance." Somewhere in the hollow metal ribs of the outpost, Kale tore through a blast door using nothing but his claws. The scent of ozone and hydraulic fluid filled the air. He passed the wreckage of a drone station, leaving no survivors. Every kill was precise, no wasted motion, no spectacle. Just quiet death. But he didn't seek just any blood. He was tracking someone. The scent was faint, interlaced with old burn marks, a signature only he could read. Rourke's final path before his removal. Kale stopped at the hangar bay control room. Inside, a pilot lay dying, gasping as blood leaked from his ruptured armor. He looked up in terror, expecting pain. Kale stepped over him and tapped into the ship's flight logs. His fingers moved carefully, matching code protocols Rourke had once shown him, not out of understanding but repetition, memory. The logs confirmed it. Judicator. Designation 17 Alpha. Orbiting above in low geostationary position. The apex had a target. Within 2 hours, the Judicator received an automated docking request from a Coalition patrol craft. The bioscan showed human crew signatures. Standard procedure allowed docking under combat evacuation code 912. They opened the bay doors. They never saw the Predator slip from the ceiling. It was fast. Terrifyingly so. 3 guards dropped in seconds. Not killed, incapacitated. Kale didn't waste time with unnecessary death. His goal lay deeper inside. The ship's AI-activated defense drones. Kale moved like a fluid machine. Every limb knew its role. Every corridor became his terrain. Flashlights cut through the dark, but the apex was never where they pointed. Always behind. Always ahead. Inside his cell, Rourke heard the alarms. Red lights painted the hallway. Distant gunfire followed. Shouts. Screams. Then silence. The door opened. No guards. No fanfare. Just Kale. Rourke blinked. For a second he didn't believe it. "You idiot," he said quietly. "You actually came." Kale stepped inside and shattered the restraint clamps in 3 quick strikes. Rourke dropped to his knees, catching his breath. Kale waited. Silent. Watching. "You're gonna get both of us killed." Kale tilted his head slightly, that same animal movement that somehow carried more emotion than most voices. Rourke stood. "All right then. What's the plan?" Kale turned and walked out. They moved through the wrecked hallways like ghosts. Kale cleared the path, Rourke followed. He grabbed a fallen sidearm, hesitating only slightly. He hadn't fired on his own men in years. But this wasn't protocol anymore. It was survival. And vengeance. When they reached the core command deck, the ship's remaining officers were already dead. Not by Kale's hand. By their own. They'd sealed themselves in and vented the oxygen. They feared what he represented. Rourke took a seat at the helm, shaking his head. "Whole systems fried. We'll have to jump from orbit the old-fashioned way." Kale placed a hand on the console. It was clumsy, rough, but deliberate. He was offering to stay behind. To cover the escape. Rourke stared at him. "No." Kale didn't move. "You don't get to throw yourself away for me. I didn't save you just to lose you now." Kale's shoulders shifted. A rumble escaped his throat. Not a growl. Not a threat. A sound like mourning. Rourke stepped forward, placed a hand over the plated scar on Kale's chest. "You're not just a weapon. You never were." The ship began to rumble. Coalition interceptors were approaching. 30 seconds, maybe less. Rourke turned toward the escape pod bay. "Let's go. We both walk out of this." "That's an order." Kale followed. As the pod detached and launched toward the planetary surface, the Judicator exploded behind them, struck by friendly fire meant to eliminate the breach. They spiraled in silence, Rourke unconscious from the G-force, Cale curled in the corner like a shadow, one arm shielding the cockpit glass as debris scorched past. Somewhere below, the alien coalition prepared their cover story. Prisoner lost during riot. Predator terminated in containment fire. No record survived. They didn't know he was still coming. And this time he wasn't running. He was hunting. The drop capsule struck the canyon floor with a teeth-jarring crunch. Metal groaned. Steam hissed from ruptured vents. Sand blasted out in all directions like a ripple of fire and dust. For a moment all was still. Then the hatch creaked open, wrenched from within. Cale stepped out first. His body smoked from heat friction, armor plates charred but intact. One leg favored the other slightly, but his stride didn't slow. Behind him, Rourke climbed out, coughing into his sleeve, skin pale under the thin desert sun. The terrain stretched for miles in every direction. Red stone ridges, dry riverbeds, shattered shale dunes. No settlement in sight. No cities. Just emptiness and heat. You always pick the scenic routes, Rourke muttered, dragging a supply pack from the capsule's remains. Cale scanned the horizon, nostrils flaring. Something in the air unsettled him. Not the heat or the wind or the silence. The absence of predators. This place should have been crawling with ferals and scavenger drones. Instead it was clean. Too clean. Controlled. Cale lowered himself into a crouch, resting one clawed hand on the ground. The vibrations confirmed it. Underground resonance. Buried metal. Cold plasma surges humming just below the dust. They were not alone. 3 days passed before they found the first sign of civilization. A mining outpost etched into the canyon walls, half abandoned, half converted into a black site lab. Rourke spotted the disguised antenna arrays first. Cale noticed the fresh tracks. Not human. Not natural. Coalition. Inside, the smell of antiseptic burned the nostrils. The lights buzzed too perfectly. Walls too clean. No signs of life, yet every console glowed with active feeds. Cale moved through it with eerie calm, his steps silent. Rourke followed, weapon drawn but lowered. He felt it too, something watching them. Recording them. In the central chamber they found what remained of the miners. Stacked in frozen columns, neatly preserved. Not killed in violence. Dissected. Locked. Labeled. Cale stopped before a stasis pod sealed in thick glass. Inside floated a juvenile apex. Barely grown, still rib-thin, pupils wide with fear even in sleep. Wires fed into its skull. Numbers marked its chest. Cape 136. Rourke exhaled sharply. They're still making them. Cale touched the glass gently. The young apex's fingers twitched in reflex. A fragment of memory burned behind his eyes. Another like him long ago with brighter eyes and a softer frame. K-36. The first one. The only one he remembered before Rourke. He turned away. Further in they found what they didn't want to see. Cale's file projected across a massive black console. Surveillance footage, kill ratios, thermal maps, psychological charts. A voice played on loop. Come. Academic. Subject K-117 displays significant deviation. Emotional resonance with human operator has resulted in self-initiated protection behavior. Loyalty markers spiked following termination of Commander Rourke Vane. Rourke stared. Termination. Cale stilled. The recording continued. Subject's reaction to fabricated death demonstrates full emotional intelligence. Controlled grief led to violent independence. All test parameters exceeded. We recommend finalization. Rourke's voice broke through the silence. They faked it. Cale didn't move. They told you I was dead. The console changed screens. Dozens of live feed windows showed familiar faces. Coalition generals, corporate lords, alien elite. Not in military command rooms. In estates. In bunkers. In orbiting pleasure stations far from the war. Each had given an order. Each had signed the directive to terminate both the human and the predator. Cale memorized each face. He turned to Rourke. The message was clear. Permission? Rourke nodded once. Do what you were built to do. What followed over the next 3 weeks would be studied for generations. If the records had survived. The predator did not strike from the shadows. Not anymore. He sent warnings. Sections of noble palaces torn in half, blood painted into ancient glyphs that spelled only one word across their walls. Rourke. The coalition tried to contain the panic. They sealed their cities. Deployed elite battalions. Stationed plasma cannons on every orbital ring. It did not help. In the Delvandy Nebula, the governor of Ralios 9 awoke to find his security team dead around him and his tongue pinned to the wall with a claw-shaped mark scorched in red. In the pleasure domes of Vraka, a trade mogul known for human trafficking was torn from his gravity chair mid-broadcast. His scream looped for 7 hours on Coalition News before the signal went dark. On a desert moon, the same one where Kale had first been tested as a child, a lab was found split in two. Inside, every Apex prototype had been released. None harmed the Predator. He was their ghost. Their first. Their last. But the Apex wasn't alone. Rourke moved in parallel. He hacked into Coalition data archives, releasing suppressed war crimes to galactic networks. He recorded each of Kale's targets and played back the trials the victims had never received. One clip showed the general who'd ordered Kale's initial execution watching footage of Rourke's death, again and again laughing. Rourke made sure that was the last sound the man ever made. Yet through it all, Rourke watched Kale closely. The way his eyes lost their glow after each kill. The silence that grew between them. Something inside Kale was unraveling. "Talk to me," Rourke said one night in the wreck of a command frigate. Kale sat beside a dying fire, head low. Not sleeping. Just still. "I know you can't speak," Rourke continued. "But you don't have to do this alone." Kale shifted, the orange glow casting his scars in shadow. "I don't care what they call you," Rourke said. "You're not a ghost. You're Kale. You're my brother." Kale's head turned slightly. Then something strange happened. He reached into his own chest armor and withdrew a single charred piece of metal. Burnt. Warped. But recognizable. A dog tag. Rourke took it. His own name etched into the steel, melted along the edges from the original termination scene. He stared at it for a long time. Kale had carried it this whole time. "They made you a weapon," Rourke whispered. "You made yourself something else." Kale's breath was steady. Still. Listening. Outside, the Coalition's last stronghold prepared for war. They had one target left. The Architect. Grand Marshal Ulrox, the being who approved every kill order, every prototype purge, every manipulation that brought Kale into existence and Rourke to the edge of annihilation. He waited inside a fortress of crystal and steel orbiting the twin stars of Juno Prime, flanked by fleets and protected by the finest AI defenses ever devised. He believed he was safe. He believed wrong. Kale and Rourke stood on the edge of the final drop bay. No words passed between them. But both knew this was not about vengeance anymore. It was about ending the myth that obedience could not feel. That loyalty could not choose. That predators could not love. The jump drive cracked open space like a blade tearing cloth. Their stolen Corvette dropped from hypershift in total silence, orbiting Juno Prime's dual suns like a forgotten ember drifting too close to fire. The station ahead loomed like a crown of silver bones, each spire glittering, each layer humming with weapon systems that could vaporize a fleet. No one had breached it in 200 years. No one had tried. Kale stood at the viewport, motionless. Rourke adjusted the console with a slow, deliberate hand. He glanced at the readings. Thousands of active defense signatures. Plasma arrays. Drone wings. 6 interceptor fleets. "You know there's no way in clean," Rourke said. Kale didn't answer. He didn't need to. His hand rose, tracing the curve of the station in the glass, as if feeling the shape of the enemy. "It's suicide," Rourke muttered and then caught himself. "Correction. It's suicide for anyone else." Kale turned. His armor was worn, scorched, but every step he took toward the launch bay felt like inevitability. He had no plan beyond the truth of his body and the memory of the man who had given him a name. There were no orders left to follow. No experiments left to run. There was only this last silence waiting to be broken. Rourke followed him. He loaded a plasma rifle and slung it over his back, buckling his chest plate with a grunt. "Last time I trusted you with my life, I ended up dead. Let's see if we can make it stick." They breached the station manually, flying in on magnetic wings fitted with shielding stripped from wrecked cruisers. The moment they passed the outer sensor ring, the alarms triggered. The walls came alive. Gunfire from auto turrets stitched the air like lightning. Drones poured from vents like locusts. Kale didn't flinch. He dove through it, a blur of steel and muscle, cutting through machines like they were threats. Rourke landed hard, rolled, came up firing, moving in rhythm behind the Predator. Every motion was practiced now. The man and the weapon moved like two limbs of the same beast. The deeper they went, the quieter it got. The station's brilliance faded into sterile white corridors lined with translucent glass. Inside the walls, Rourke saw rows of suspended bodies, failed prototypes, clones, partial apexes, experiments sealed in stasis. Some bore Cale's face. He paused. Cale didn't. Past the last corridor stood a massive door carved from obsidian alloy. No locks. No guards. Rourke looked at him. End of the road. Cale stepped forward and pressed his hand to the sensor. The door hissed open. The Grand Marshal sat on a platform surrounded by light, tall, draped in ceremonial fibers of flowing crystal. His face was ancient and mechanical, the skin around his eyes stretched tight by age and reconstruction. Dozens of hovering spheres circled him, recording every second. He didn't rise. So it's true, he said, voice rippling through modulation. The apex survived. The human lives. Fascinating. Cale took a step forward. The Marshal raised a single finger. I wouldn't. You're already dead. You just haven't realized it. Rourke aimed the rifle. He's not here to die. Ulrox laughed, the sound hollow and dry. You think you've achieved something? You're a footnote. You were always a test. You both were. The real legacy is what we learned from you. Cale didn't speak, but the air around him grew tight. Heavy. A pressure that made the lights flicker. Ulrox continued. We proved loyalty could be engineered. We proved grief was programmable. We learned how to make weapons feel just enough to die for their masters, and not enough to question why. Rourke stepped closer. You lied to him. You faked my death. You made him watch it. Why? The Marshal's eyes gleamed. Because I wanted to know what came next. Cale surged forward. The Marshal raised both hands, triggering a defense field. Shields flared to life. Plasma sentries descended from the ceiling, firing bolts of searing light. Cale darted between them, deflecting shots with the curve of his back. One shot tore across his thigh. Another across his shoulder. He didn't stop. He didn't need to. Rourke leapt into cover, unloading pulse after pulse into the sentries. One exploded. Then another. He advanced, backing Cale, never missing a step. The chamber shook under the weight of their assault. Cale reached the shield. He didn't strike. He stood before it, towering over the Marshal, staring through the shimmering field. For a long moment he didn't move. The Marshal's voice faltered. What are you waiting for? Cale placed his hand against the barrier. Slowly. Calmly. It recognized his biosignature. The shield deactivated. Ulrox's confidence broke. Cale lunged. But he didn't kill him. He pinned him. Rourke approached, gun still raised. Cale looked at him. The meaning was clear. It wasn't enough to kill him. It was time to let the galaxy see him. Rourke activated the spheres. They lit green. Live broadcast. Every system in the outer colonies pinged. Rourke faced the Marshal. This is Grand Marshal Ulrox. He created the Predator program. He faked my death. Tortured a sentient being to see if it could feel. He gave the order to wipe us out. Everything that followed, every life lost, every station burned, was because he wanted proof that monsters could love. Cale stepped back. The Marshal shook. You think they'll believe you? You think they'll care? They already are, Rourke said. He left him alive. They walked away. As they reached the breach pod, Cale paused. Rourke turned to him. We're not done, are we? Cale looked up at the stars. No, Rourke said. Not yet. He activated the launch. The pod shot free, leaving the station behind, leaving the legacy of vengeance complete. The galaxy would change. The Predators were no longer slaves. The humans were no longer pawns. The myth had broken. But more importantly, Cale was no longer a weapon. He was a being. A brother. And as the stars stretched before them, Rourke looked at him with something close to a smile. You're free now, he said. Cale turned his head slightly. Not quite. Free was never the goal. The ones who made him had tried to hunt him. And now he would hunt for those who still did.